Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 23rd episode, and today we will be discussing all the lost human potential, Alphacore campaign impressions, and the pitfalls of surrogacy. So we're going to get right into this with the concept of human potential. Basic definition of this is just the amount of positive things that humans can do. And this is a concept that's been stewing in my mind for quite a while, and it's come back into the forefront with the release of the last Beatles song, Now and Then. So John Lennon died 1980. He was murdered, if you don't know the history of that. And when people think of John Lennon, people think of all the music he could have written, all the things that he could have done, the child that he had with Yoko Ono that he could have raised and seen into it as an adult. And when people lament the death of John Lennon, they are mourning the loss of the great loss of human potential. So I do think John Lennon's very emblematic of the concept of human potential and how it can be snuffed out very tragically. And this is the case for a lot of people, not just people dying before their time, as in you die when you're 20, 30, 40, even, you've got 12-year-olds and, all these young people who drop dead of heart attacks for quote unquote mysterious reasons, right? But it's not just dying prematurely, it's also dealing with great trauma or negative events that you have to overcome. And some people never overcome those negative events, and it hampers them down. It snuffs out their human potential, right? The ability to do great things with the life that you're given, right? Because your life has been destroyed and you're just trying to pick up the pieces and get to a 0 point, much less improve. So there is a lot of lost human potential, but there's also the ability to create human potential. The first thing is having kids and raising them correctly. That's one way. The second thing is self-improvement, which is why I'm such a big advocate of self-improvement, because the more you improve yourself, right, the more potential you have, i.e. more human potential that you're going to inflict onto yourself and the world, and you're going to make the world a better place. So human potential is a great thing, and we've lost a lot of it, but we also have the opportunity to gain a lot more of it. So, John Lennon will never make music again, but, there's millions and millions of people who will be able to take up songwriting and be able to use all the modern technology to make great music, right? And that's what you have to look forward to, and that's what you have to keep your eye on, rather than think of, the, 10 or so more albums Lennon could have wrote, or the more albums that Biggie or Pac or all these musicians who died in their younger years. You think of Jim Morrison, you think of Amy Winehouse, you can think of a whole bunch of musicians who died before they quote unquote should have, right? So there is that, but like I said, there are plenty of people who are making music now, who are going to be making music in the future that is worth listening to, that is great, that is fantastic, and that's only, that's one aspect of human potential. There's more to, humans than making music, right? There's, comic books and engineering and mathematics and medicine and all these sorts of fields of studies that people are investing themselves in, specializing in, and will be able to do great things if they build great careers in them. And you're only able to do that if you are self-improving, and two, if there are people around to do it, which is why family is important, even though I'm not actively having a family myself and having kids. I'm not sure if I ever will, but that is a surefire way to create human potential, is to have kids and raise them, right? So if you are in the position to do that, then I would recommend doing that. But next thing we're going to talk about is the Alphacore campaign. I haven't checked the numbers recently, but we're probably around 700,000 at the time I'm recording this right now. Last time I checked, it was around $690,000, I believe made $500,000 within its first calendar day, launched at 11. So a ridiculous open for Alphacore, and a definite proving that there is a market for Alphacore, for the Alphacore comic book, and the Rippaverse is more than just Isom, right? So that was what Alphacore was going to prove, was can the Rippaverse be this big expansive comic book universe? And the answer is a resounding yes, especially when people get that book in their hands and it turns out to be as good as I think it's going to be. Of course, I will review Alphacore 1 on the Substack, so I hope you all look out for that. And then the next thing I'm really excited for is Gyra 1. I think that book is going to do numbers. We got the reveal of cover A by Cannon White. Fantastic art by Cannon White. As always, he did the short box artwork for the Rippaverse short box. That artwork was done by Cannon White, and it is fantastic, and he lends his skills to the A cover for Gyra in a beautiful, beautiful way. So I'm very excited to get my hands on Gyra 1 and Alphacore 1 as well. And the campaign has been going really well in terms of revenue and also in terms of technical issues, I would say. The queue system did its job. They reinforced the servers with all the steroid hamsters as well. So I haven't really experienced any technical issues. I've gotten into the queue a couple of times, and I was able to get early access to the campaign just fine because I am a paid member on that site. So it all worked perfectly well for me, so it's a much smoother site experience than it was with the launches of ISOM 1 and 2, which is fantastic, and I think it's only going to get better from here as they get more resources, expand, and get more experience and the ability to have more server space on their side, right? So Alphacore off to a rip-roaring start. Alphacore Autumn is going to be fantastic, and then we head right into Gyra Winter, which I also think is going to be fantastic. And if Alphacore 1 was able to make 500,000 a day, I think Gyra 1 is probably going to either match or beat that, just based on how enthusiastic people are about Gyra, right? And the Alphacore is something that people do admire. Raxwell, Solari, and Valdez are characters that the fan bases love, but Gyra was the shining beacon. She was the standout of the ISOM 1 campaign. People really wanted a Gyra book, and we're getting it. So I think people are going to put their money where their mouth is when Gyra 1 starts its pre-order campaign, and it's going to do numbers. And you have to realize with the Rippaverse is that Gyra 2 is already in production, and Gyra 1 is most likely going to make enough money to bankroll 10 issues of Gyra. So this is going to be a very profitable country, and all the profitable company and all the profits are going to be flown right back into the business, and that's going to just snowball into this fantastic thing. We're already seeing that with the animated trailers that we're getting, with all the extra books that are being produced, with all the merchandise that's coming out. So it is a fantastic thing to see that the Rippaverse is strong. It's here to stay. It has a extreme presence, which I absolutely love, and I am excited to be a part of it, getting in on the ground floor and going up as the elevator rises up to, I would say, the stratosphere, my friend. So that is it for my Alphacore campaign impressions. Very positive, very excited, a lot of hype for this book and the Rippaverse in general. But we're going to move on to a bit of a heavier topic, and that is surrogacy, where you have somebody else carry your child because you either don't want to or can't. So this is what a lot of gay men do, and I was scrolling through Twitter or X, and I did see this screenshot of a Reddit post, so I'm not sure if it's exactly a real thing, and it doesn't matter if it's real or not. The idea of this is that there are, I say, these moral implications with something like surrogacy, in the sense that you're basically renting out a woman's uterus and you're using it as basically a baby growing machine, right? You're not respecting the woman's role as a mother. You're taking away the child's ability to have a caring, loving mother, and it's part of the destruction of this holy trinity of humanity: the man, the woman, and their children. When you normalize surrogacy to this extent, so the story here is that you have this gay couple in their 30s. they have a child through a surrogate, and 8 months of pregnancy, the woman goes, well, I want to keep the kid, and of course, there's a lot of anger and resentment there on, I guess, both sides. And it's like, well, you signed this contract, we gave you a lot of money, so we're going to keep this kid. And because it's our kid, it's not your kid, just because it's in your womb for 9 months and you are the child's mother, right? In a sense, most likely, if it's two gay men, then you're both the egg donor and the surrogate, right? And this is a very, I would say, cruel thing to do. And woman, even if you sign on and agree to it, right? If you go into it saying like, hey, I think this is okay, and you think of pregnancy as this absolutely meaningless thing, right? Because that's where the culture is pushed people into thinking, with abortion, with surrogacy, with the antinatalism movement, all these sorts of things, that pregnancy is this meaningless thing. There's no bond formed. It's just a clump of cells, yada yada. But you come to realize when you go through the pregnancy that there's a bonding that happens. There is this emotional connection that you have with your unborn baby as it grows and develops inside you. Not something I'll ever experience, but this is what I have heard, and this is the biological mechanisms at play, that formation of that strong maternal instinct that happens in utero, right? And you've also got the concept of fetal maternal microchimerism, where the fetus, cells from the fetus will travel through the umbilical cord, and you'll actually have cells from the fetus implant themselves and form in the mother, right? Very interesting stuff. So there's a very intimate bond. I would say it's the most intimate relationship you can have with another human being, is to be another human's mother, right? To actually have that role, right? It's most probably the most intimate connection you can have with another person. Now, I'm not nearly sappy enough to say that justifies unconditional love from your mother and to your mother, but it is I would say it is definitely a fact. It's the most intimate in that sense of like just how connected and close those two people are during that process, and usually for at least a bit of a time afterwards. But anyway, surrogacy really destroys the concept of that relationship existing. It's like, well, we're just going to rent out your uterus, have you pop the kid out, and then we're going to take it from you and raise it as your own. And this is, something that gay men do. This is also something that rich women do. There'll be rich women who will freeze their eggs, and it's like, they're 35, 40, however, old, and they're like, well, I want to have a kid, but I don't want to, go through the negative effects of pregnancy, right? So you just get a economically downtrodden woman, offer her some 5-figure sum to go through a pregnancy for you. And this is a very weird thing where the kid is biologically that the donor, the mother donor, that woman's mother who's using the surrogate, but there's also the fact that the child was actually mothered by somebody else, so the child technically has two mothers in a sense. So it's a very biologically weird thing. It's not natural at all, and this has consequences for human society that I don't think are really at all positive. Now, it's not necessarily a violation of the NAP per se to do this. You could argue that putting a child, through this, conceiving the child, is an act of aggression in and of itself, but that's going into a bit of a gray area for me personally. But the whole thing is that there are pitfalls to surrogacy. It is not necessarily this universally good thing to do, right? So it's not something that I would encourage. It's not a way, if the only way for me to have a kid was through surrogacy, I would rather remain childless. That's me personally. That's really how I feel about it. I don't think surrogacy is something that should be really practiced by anybody, and especially this whole thing where, like, I'm talking about this story from Reddit where you get two gay men, and you have this woman who's like, well, I want to keep the kid. They're dangling the fact that, well, we spent a lot of money on you, and you are in no position to basically buy out the right to be a mother to your own child. Right? I think that is unnecessarily cruel to even be in the mindset of doing that, right? So if you don't have, if you're a couple and there's no uterus between the two of you, then maybe you shouldn't have a biological child. But hey, I guess that makes me a bigot. But I'm going to leave it there. I was a bit all over the place in this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and we're going into the outro now. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. Be sure to follow my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to read Machine to Man and all my other projects.